Certified Sommelier Beverly Crandon, and welcome to the Wine Down, where we talk about all things wine and make it highly approachable. Today on the Wine Down is kind of like a part 2 of the wines of Ontario, but we're going to get hyper-focused on one wine. So today's Wine Down is kind of like a part 2 of the Wine Down session we did on the regions of Ontario, the wine regions of Ontario. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I strongly encourage you to do so. But what's different about today is that instead of talking about multiple regions or multiple producers, I'm going to hone in on just one, which is the Domaine Le Clos Jordanne. Again, what we're tasting from Domaine Le Clos Jordanne is their Clos De Kew Pinot Noir 2023. This wine and many others that they've recently released marks a very special transformation for the Domaine. In 2023, the parent company of Le Clos Jordanne purchased an older winery, Angel's Gate, and that property then came under the Domaine's purview. So now what you see is the Domaine, for the very first time in its history, has a vineyard, an estate property with a tasting room where they can now welcome visitors and wine lovers, which is amazing. You know, the Clos Jordanne, they've been making wine for 20 years, but previously they worked with their vineyards in the Jordan Bench. They had their own vineyards, but all the winemaking and barrel aging had to happen off-site with partner wineries, such as Jackson Triggs, also in Niagara. As mentioned, I want to focus on just one producer, which is Domaine Le Clos Jordanne, and we're going to taste through one of their wines, their newer wines, which is their Clos De Kew Pinot Noir 2023. And listen, if you recall, when we talked about Ontario, an Ontario wine, and when we got into the Niagara Peninsula region of Ontario, we talked about how the peninsula, because of its varied soil, is broken down into 2 appellations, Niagara Escarpment and Niagara on the Lake. Le Clos Jordanne, their vineyards sit in the Niagara Escarpment appellation, and more specifically, the wine we're tasting today comes from a sub-appellation within there called Beamsville Bench. Now, as mentioned, Le Clos Jordanne, they've been making wines for 20 years at their Jordan vineyard, which is on Jordan Bench. Now, again, with the purchase of the new property, they've got vineyard land on Beamsville Bench. And if you remember when we went through the Ontario wine regions and then the sub-appellations of Niagara Peninsula, we talked about how from plot to plot or sub-appellation to sub-appellation, you get a lot of differences in soil, climate, aspect ratio, all those good things. So the Clos Jordanne wines coming out of the Jordan Bench, I found those to be very linear, very pointed, very focused. Their Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays had vibrant acidity with them and really exuberant fruit, really age-worthy. Now going over to the bench, what you get with Beamsville Bench, and if you recall when we did the wine regions of Ontario, Beamsville Bench is slightly warmer than Jordan. And it's also got a longer growing season. So I'm expecting to find wines on the palate that are going to be a little bit rounder, still with that vibrant acidity. It's still Ontario, cool climate, but I'm expecting something that's going to be a bit more rounder on the palate. So let's just dig into this wine. So what I can tell you is that this is 100% Pinot Noir, barrel aged 18 months in French Burgundian oak. Only 23% of that was new oak. So that's just some background for you. It is, of course, Pinot Noir, so it is that light ruby color, very gorgeous, very youthful and energetic in color in the center, in the rim and the center area. On the nose, abundant red berry, for sure. So I'm getting cherry, raspberry, a little bit of strawberry, some violet, some florals in there. Something with a touch of minerality too on the nose here with this. I'm getting like white peppercorn, so a bit of spice. A kiss of oak. you know, we talked about it being aged 18 months, 23% new French oak. It's not the first thing that comes out at you. It's that fruit. That fruit comes out. And also florals, so violet, cherry blossom, as I mentioned. Let's taste this and see what we get on the palate. What's interesting, you still get that red berry that we nosed, but now black plum, black currant, that's coming in. You really get the non-fruit on the palate. So the fruit, of course, you get it, non-fruit's there. I'm getting my bay leaf. I'm still getting that white peppercorn. I'm getting some fennel on here as well. A touch of chocolate, almond skin. This is very complex, a lot of layers. In terms of structure, which is where I should have started. In terms of structure, medium plus acidity, medium tannins, medium alcohol. It's dry. A very long and balanced finish. You know, sometimes a wine can have a long finish, but there are 1 or 2 notes only that you're getting. Here, the finish on this wine is touching my back palate, side palate, and there's many things happening, a medley of things happening on the palate here. I would say this would be a fun one to revisit again 5 years from now to see how those complex layers of fruit, non-fruit, all the herb, how that all balances out and plays together. It'd be great to see where that's at in 5 years. This wine comes from their Block 350. And, you know, Le Clos Jordanne, they're very big on that. They will take their vineyards and they'll parcel them up because they notice something really specific or special about a grape grown at that particular plot. Block 350, for example, is about 1.2 hectares, a little under 3 acres. So small. So that's what makes this a single vineyard, kind of crew showing, if you will, of Pinot Noir. And you know what? I don't rate wines, but if I were, this would get a really high rating for me. So, I mean, it's a great example to kind of follow up on what we did with the Ontario wine regions when we talked about there's some typicity, but also when you go from plot to plot, vineyard to vineyard, appellation to appellation, sub-appellation to sub-appellation, you note stark differences in terroir. And I couldn't think of another producer to follow up our wines of Ontario, our Ontario wine region wine down session that we did. Couldn't think of a better producer to follow that up with, like Clos Jordanne. Thanks for joining me today on the Wine Down, where we explored Ontario even further, but with a really super focused view on Domaine Le Clos Jordanne, specifically their Clos De Kew Pinot Noir 2023. A great showing of terroir, a great showing of a sense of place in the glass. I really do hope that this encourages you to go out and check out some Ontario wines. We've got them in your market. Cheers and happy tasting. And now for the last word. Wine is a journey, not a destination. Every bottle uncorks something new to be discovered. With that, I will say cheers to new adventures in every wine glass. And that's the last word.